it's a fresh session. So thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Archana. Thank you, Jawad, for coming in. And
Thank you, Vikram.
whatever we, I mean, of course, look, in terms of that discussion, also definitely can go on. It's a long discussion. Same thing with what we are discussing now. And this was a topic which Jawad, I think, Jawad, you were the one who suggested this topic. So on mediator bias. So we're discussing mediator bias, and then we'll take it as or whatever. But I think what we do is just a quick introduction. So Jawad, you can just a quick introduction, then Archana and Nina can introduce themselves because it is a fresh session, and then we take from there. Yeah, Jawad.
Okay, as you can see, I think on the screen, my name is Jawad, and I'm from India. I'm based in Chennai. I've been a lawyer for 35 years now, and a mediator for the past 15 years. I'm also a trainer in mediation. I train people in mediation, and I work for ADR ODR International, which is a UK-based organization. And I'm a partner in KD Lex Chambers, which is a limited liability partnership based in Delhi. Well, I think
Okay, perfect. That's brief enough.
it
That's
about me.
brief enough. So something about your experience with mediation and your being a lawyer and all that. If you could just briefly want to touch that, so you can touch that
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah, okay. I will put it this way because I was in Belfast recently, and there I met an Irish mediator, Bill Holohan, and I recorded this, what he said. So what he said was this, and it exactly applies to me also. It resonated with me because that was exactly what I did too. And this is what he said. He said, after worshipping for 25 years at the Satanic Church of Litigation, I found the true church of mediation for the past 16 years. So that's about, I think it about sums up everything. And I was really like a fish out of water in litigation. It was not something that suited my temperament or my personality, but I had very few choices, so I had to pursue the profession. But when I discovered mediation, as I always keep saying, that it was a sort of a eureka moment for me, except that I didn't run out of the bathtub like what Archimedes had done. But it was a sort of quite a landmark moment in my professional life where I took the plunge, because that was a time when mediation was not even heard about much in India. And people laughed at me. My own friends laughed at me, and they said, "Are you gone crazy? Are you?" They thought that I was committing professional hierarchy. And I did go through a lot of difficulties in the beginning, but I think I'm very happy for all that now. And I'm much more at peace with myself. And I fancy myself as a peacemaker.
But the only thing, Jawad, is that obviously with the situation with mediation, he still has to practice as an arbitrator, which we have to get him out of. So that part of it, Jawad, you'll have to get out of that. We can't have you doing that.
Yeah,
It will not. Your peace of
that
mind is not going to come and hold.
no, I think that once the money starts coming, I'll have to stop. I will be
Oh,
stopping the
exactly.
arbitration.
That's where the
So,
whole thing
yeah.
lies. That's what we
Well,
have to work
I
on.
have to run my kitchen, right?
Exactly. That's what you have to work on. That's the important part. So,
Yeah.
Nina, you want to a quick introduction because it's a fresh session. So, just a little bit if you want to talk about yourself.
So my name is Nina, and I'm from Sweden. I'm connecting from Gothenburg today. And I have been working with problem solving for over 30 years. And I think I was a mediator from the beginning, but I didn't understand that until one day when I solved a problem at work, and everybody was looking at me and like, what were you doing? That was so powerful. And then I thought to myself, what did I do? And then after that, I found a training in mediation, and actually I went to a master in mediation in Ireland. So I have also been to Northern Ireland and heard a lot about their interesting processes. So yeah, that's me. I love the subject of mediation, and I'm also have transformed to like trying to create peace, I think. Firstly in individuals, and then through the individuals to groups. And yeah, let's see.
Perfect.
That's my wish.
Yes, Archana.
Okay, so my name is Archana Medikar. I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. And just to describe a little bit of my history before I came to Canada and practiced here. I was practicing in India. I was born and brought up there. So I think looking at how people's differences come about and immigration or migration and how people bring their culture with them. And when it ends up on mediation table, how mediators have their biases and how the cultural competence is the key component that we all need to bring to the table as a mediator is the important theme of my life. So I'm happy to stay and participate in the conversation as well.
Absolutely. What I've done is I've, Jawad, Nina, I've put the link to the book that Archana has written. So this is free to everyone to read. So of course you've read the title, but otherwise people who of course can't see that. It's domestic violence in immigrant communities. So that's what it is. So thank you very much for coming in. And I have to take that 30 seconds to just put the information of the conference out. This is what the conference is all about. And of course, you'll find the schedule on my social media profile. Please, if you want to participate, get in touch. So I'll take only that much time for this, and Jawad will take over from here. Yes, Jawad. Mediator bias.
Yeah. Well, I did suggest the topic, Vikram, because I have always been, I've always wondered, when we got trained as mediators, we were told to watch out for the biases of the parties. So we were told that, parties suffer from cognitive biases. They have anchoring bias, they have reactive devaluation, they have confirmation bias, they have blah, blah, blah. I mean, a whole lot of biases. We were told that, we have to look out for those biases and see how we are going to deal with those biases. But then I always used to wonder, and even when I do the training, I used to talk about the party's biases. But then I thought that, what about our own biases? Aren't we human beings? Aren't we people who have grown up in a certain environment, who have been taught certain values, who believe in certain ideologies, who have certain religious convictions? So don't we have those biases? Don't we suffer from those same biases that other people do? Does being a mediator make me a saint who has, undergone a sudden transformation where I have become so conscious and so, elevated that I absolutely don't have any bias. I'm totally non-judgmental, and I can, be completely neutral when it comes to dealing with parties. So that is where the question came to my mind, that why don't we have a discussion on that? Because what better forum than Vikram's forum, where mediators from all over the world come, and let us put this question. And before that, we were also having a discussion for the Indian mediators. So I framed the topic this way. I said, how important is it for a mediator to become emotional in a mediation? And that triggered a lot of, very energetic discussion from mediators. And most of the mediators were saying, we have to be above the emotions. We should not feel emotional. We should remain dispassionate about the whole thing. We should be, we should have a very clinical approach. But then there is the challenge that how do you do all that? Are we really that so evolved within ourselves that we are able to first and foremost recognize when those biases creep in? Are we able to really understand that, yes, what am I saying? Am I being biased here? Am I feeling closer to one party and not to the other party because perhaps that party is speaking the language that I understand, or perhaps is expressing those ideas that I can identify with, or behaving in a way that resonates with me? So where is this coming from? Do I have that kind of an evolved mind that I do really, I'm able to identify at that point of time that I'm going through this process? I'll just tell one small example of what actually happened in one mediation, which I was quite surprised at myself when I learned about this. I'm very sensitive about children. Okay, I have two grandsons, and my elder grandson was about 5 years old when I was doing this mediation. And what happened was, there was this case of, it was a matrimonial dispute. And we have what is called the Domestic Violence Act. the wife had invoked the act and she was keeping the husband out of the joint house. And she was staying there with their 5-year-old son. Now, the husband was staying out. And what happened was, in this case, what the husband's grievance against the wife was that she has a gym instructor coming to the house at about 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, and she sends the boy out with the domestic help. The boy is taken out, and he's down. They were living in an apartment building, and there was some open space over there. And the boy used to be there, and she was not even providing him with anything for the child, like no water, no juice, or something to eat if he feels hungry. So from 10:30 to 12:30, she would do her workouts, and then she will call the child back. And that was when she would be giving him any food or drink or whatever. Now, the husband's grievance was this, and the wife did not deny it. Now, honestly, because being a grandfather of 2 grandsons about the same age, I don't know whether at that point of time I did empathize with the child, or I did feel that what the mother was doing was wrong, though I'm not conscious of that. Honestly, I'm not conscious of even thinking about that. But there was perhaps something in me that the wife could find out that, this was something that had affected me. I don't know how she did. And she said, "I think you're biased against me," she said. So this took me by surprise, because I didn't realize that, I didn't even look at her when the husband was telling me this. Like, sometimes when somebody is complaining against someone, and you turn and look at the person who's the subject matter of the complaint, it looks as if you're giving an accusatory look, or you're agreeing with this person. I didn't even do that. So I was trying my best to remain as, what should I say, omnipartial or neutral or whatever you may call it. But she could sense it. She could sense, and which was something that even I did not realize. It was only after I came back home and I thought about this, I realized that, yes, I think she was right. And then I told her that, look, I think if you're not comfortable, I think you should opt for some other deal. And she did go to the center and said, "I want a change of the mediator." I mean, she went to a High Court mediation center and asked for the change of the mediator. So this is where I'm trying to say that, this kind of a bias that creeps into our mind without our knowing about it, without our even realizing that this is the way we are going. So this is what I thought would be a very interesting topic for discussion, and that's why I suggested that. Especially that experience about 10 years back, about 7-8 years back. This experience, kept worrying me always, that am I doing something which, I
Jawad, you've got cut off. We can't hear you. So, okay. So while Jawad comes in, Archana, Nina, whoever wants to, Archana coming in. Yeah, Archana.
Yeah, I can start. When he comes in, I'm very curious to hear how you dealt with it. How did you deal with that? I mean, how did you, because you started to reflect, and then how did you deal with it?
Yes.
Because you got cut off, Jawad.
That was when
you were saying certain things, you got cut off. So we don't know what you said. There was a point that you basically said that it happened some 8-10 years back, and after that you got
7-8 years back. Yeah.
So after that we didn't hear you.
Yeah,
so
I think Nina's question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think there was some other interruption in between. I could hear some other voice. I don't know. So what actually I did, Nina, that was a sort of a revelation for me. That was when I realized that all the time we are talking about parties' biases, while we ourselves are victims of the same biases that they may be having. So then that was the time when I started studying a little more about this, and I came across various books. I read Daniel Goleman a lot. I read his book Emotional Intelligence fully. I'm in the process of reading Social Intelligence. Now that is when I found out that we have this primal empathy, which is something that automatically happens because of our mirror neurons. We start reflecting, or we start mirroring the emotions of others. And there's also the high road where we, that is the low road. The primal empathy is the low road. And there's also the high road where we can develop that consciousness that, yes, I'm going through this. This is what I'm feeling, and explore that and try to, take a more pragmatic or a rational approach towards dealing with that situation. So what I realized, and after watching a lot of videos and discussing with a lot of people, I found out that I think perhaps the best way to do that would be to develop mindfulness. So especially when you're doing mediation, and meditation helps a lot in that. And I regularly started meditating, at least for, it started off with 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Now it's 30 minutes. I'm trying to make it 1 hour. But the only problem is I don't find it's very difficult to sit for 1 hour and meditate. But what I realize is that mindfulness meditation really helps you to be conscious of what you're thinking. So, and be sensitive to, what kind of feelings are going through you. So when I'm now the difference that I found in me after this is that when I'm angry, I realize I'm angry. It doesn't take somebody else. Before my wife used to point out to me saying, looks like you're angry. Now I needed somebody else to point out to me that I was angry, but now I realize that I'm angry. Okay, so that is the kind of change that has slowly come about, and I'm still working on it. I would say that I have reached a stage of complete, mindfulness. I'm working towards it. Hopefully, I get to that stage.
So
But
basically,
in the meantime, beg your
you got
pardon.
the wrong initials. I say Jawad AJ. It's Jawad WIP. Jawad work in progress.
Yeah, Jawad work in progress. All of us are work in progress, I suppose.
Exactly. So we removed it from everyone's name.
Yeah.
So Nina, is that what you were looking for in terms of what you asked him?
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that.
Okay, so Archana was coming in at that point. Yeah, Archana, you were saying something.
Yeah.
No. It's a fascinating conversation, Jawad. I think I heard that from both Vikram and Nina, but it's very powerful when someone can be so open, transparent, and vulnerable about the process of identifying some of the limitations of our skills, or sometimes, how you deal with it is really crucial. But I think being vulnerable and acknowledging that this happened, and then trying to figure out how I can do it better next time. That's where learning happens. So it's a very powerful narrative that you are sharing with us. Thank you for doing that. And I think one thing that you said, maybe you can elaborate more on that, but it's fascinating, again, as a litigator and then coming into the world of mediation. We have been quite dismissive about being empathetic, acknowledging emotions. And sometimes it comes, the root of that could be, of course, to control the things and not letting it go. But to the other extent, we don't think in right-based process that these things matter. But now connecting that with biases based on how you are bringing the issue of emotions and whether mediator can show empathy towards the parties is quite interesting. I found the concept of attunement liberating from this perspective. It's like you are not really identifying with one party to the other, but you are attuned to their needs.
Yes.
And once you see it that way, it allows you to adjust yourself and be self-aware, as you were talking about being mindful. So very powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Archana. I think just talking about attunement, I think that is something very important that you mentioned just now about attuning yourself to. See what happens, I feel, when you attune yourself to what the other person is feeling. For example, the party in front of you. I think one of the things that happens is the other person senses that yes, this person is understanding what I'm going through, even without you having to say anything, because that is where I think the mirror neurons kick in and convey the message that, okay, here is a person who's able to understand what I'm going through. And you don't necessarily have to say anything as a sort of an acknowledgement. So that kind of attunement is something that is, I feel, very important for mediators to develop. And I think I don't know, I'm, as Vikram said, I'm work in progress. So I'm just trying to, develop that. I hope I'll be able to do it very soon before I.
But Jawad, beyond meditation, have you ever tried chanting mantras?
I'm not a religious person,
No, no, not
Vikram.
religion, not religious, but
Yeah, yeah.
beyond religion. Mantra
Yeah.
is just a chant. It's just no religion aspect
Yeah,
to
I
it.
agree with that. Yeah, I know that. See, I read a very interesting book by Dr. Mani Bhaumik, Code Name God. So where he talks about, reciting of mantras and how it helps you to develop. But what I find is, see, I used to follow Sufism at one point of time. Okay, Sufi practices where what is called as dhikr, the repeated chanting of God's name or something like that. So I used to do that, but I don't know whether I was not doing it the right way or what. I don't know, but it didn't help me much. And what I found was when I at one point of time, I decided that, religion is not my cup of tea. And I thought that I should make a conscious departure from that. And somehow there was a sort of a transformation in me where I stopped believing in religion. And then I started doing this, especially after that experience in that mediation. Then it struck me like a thunderbolt, that I always, before that, I used to think that I'm a very objective person. I'm a very neutral person, and I can, remain above all these things. And I have absolutely no biases. I have absolutely no prejudices. That is what I used to think about myself. But then it hit me like a bolt that I'm just human. So as Archana said, I don't know whether it's being accepting your vulnerability or not, but that is the reality. And I don't think I think we should all accept a reality. Whether that makes us vulnerable or makes us powerful, whatever it might be, I think we should accept that reality. And I accepted that reality. And once I started doing this mindful meditation, which is again, I think it is a Buddhist concept of vipassana. Uh, I used to attend martial arts classes, and my instructor, my sensei, used to insist that before every class we meditate for at least half an hour. Sometimes it used to extend to 1 hour. So we used to do that regularly. And when we used to go for the grading, particularly, it used to be a 3-day or 4-day camp where it would start with meditation. In between, we will have midday, we will have a meditation session, and it will end with meditation. And each time we used to sit for 1 hour in meditation. And that was when I started realizing, that the power of it. And it really started having an effect on me, on my way of thinking, and on the way I was dealing with my own emotions and my feelings. I think in one of your sessions, I said that there was a time when I used to speak with my fists. So I'm actually ashamed about that now. But that was a period. I was young and hot-blooded and all that. Now I'm 60 years old, so transcended those stages.
That hot blood is still there, Jawad. It's just not coming out. It's all there.
No,
It comes out in different ways. It comes out in different ways.
safe ways, safe ways where it doesn't hurt anyone. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you both of you about that after he finishes. I'll tell you about this because this is a conversation we always have, and I always keep telling him that he obviously wants to reply to every tweet in the world. Anyone tweets somewhere, he wants to reply to that.
No, I don't do that. I think you're not correct in that. I don't do that.
I
do on something which is particularly offensive when it is particularly offensive to in the sense that it is a politically incorrect statement, or it is divisive, or it is full of hate, or it is spreading hate. I feel I need to respond and clarify that, because I think keeping quiet also is not an option. And I think we need to speak up against hate. I think we need to speak up against bigotry. We can't just keep quiet there, Vikram. Keeping quiet is not an answer. Just because you're a peacemaker, you believe in mediation, it doesn't mean that you keep quiet when something wrong is happening. I think you should speak out.
No, I absolutely agreed on that. What I was telling you, and which I keep telling, although maybe this is not that session where we should be talking about that, but I have to put it across, is the fact that there is certain good things that you want to talk about, but the people with whom you are talking to, those are the people you don't have to respond to. That is what I'm trying to say. They want you to respond, and they want to drag you into a certain, which I told you about wrestling with a pig situation. It's going to drag you into the mud. You are going to get dirty, and the pig is going to enjoy it. But I'm still saying all the good things. Create a platform.
What I do is I make my point and I leave it at that. People
Yeah.
take it or leave. That's up
Yeah.
to them. I don't wrestle with them. I don't get dragged in the mud.
Don't do that.
So,
But only thing on the mantra part of it, that the pronunciation has to be perfect. So I'm just throwing it out. I said mantra, but please don't pick up mantras. You have to get the pronunciation right. But they're very powerful, but pronunciation has to be perfect. So that's one thing. But Nina, what do you say? Anything that you want to talk about in this sense, where how to tackle mediator bias? Because Jawad has told us how he is looking at it. How are you looking at it?
I totally agree that we are all on a learning path. I mean, but also a crisis can help you move forward. So I had a huge crisis out of stress, maybe a little bit more than 20 years ago, where my brain, I mean, it didn't help what my brain was thinking anymore because my body had enough. So it said, no, we will not do anything that your brain is thinking. So you have to now lie down and you have to reflect over things. So of course, at the time, it was very, very difficult. And slowly I learned to listen to my body a lot. And through that, I think I also learned a lot of mindfulness. So personally, I have a lot of energy. It has been difficult for me to slow down, and I'm very good at problem solving. I like to solve problems and to I don't know, things like that. So I have been very a lot of approach forward. But slowly during my life now, I have learned to take a step back and to listen more and to accept myself as I am, both my positives and my negatives. I'm not afraid of being vulnerable anymore, but still I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
But I think that's a good asset to use in mediation, that, I mean, you're still a human being and they are still human beings. And I think I'm totally into that. Everybody is doing the best that they can at the moment.
Because I think the question, Nina, is basically, first, do you have biases? Then why do you have them? Second, can you tackle them? If you can't tackle them, should you be sitting in a mediation or not? I think those are the kind of questions that we need to answer. So what do you say? Do you have biases?
Yes, of course, everybody has some biases, but the thing is that you need to be aware of them. And therefore, it's very important for a mediator to do some self-reflective practice. And of course, you will never be perfect, but you can improve yourself. And I think it's difficult if you are not aware of that you're having bias. I mean, if you're not self-reflective at all, you can create some harm in any setting where you are, if it's a mediator or wherever you're operating. So it's very difficult. Then you need maybe somebody that you trust to help you to understand. But it's difficult because I think it has to do with maturity a bit and what you have learned through life. So I'm not sure there. It's difficult, but it's interesting.
Well, I'm just thinking that because everyone says, look, you have biases. Everyone has biases. Or are we going to reach? Is in your work in progress? Are you working towards not having biases? So is that a path that you are taking, or is it something which is accepted that yes, we will have biases, we'll have to tackle them in whatever way we have to? So that, I think, is the question. Maybe Archana can answer that. Archana, what do you say?
Oh, I don't think the socialization that we have as human beings would ever allow us to be free of biases. But I think what we could do is, and I think Nina and Jawad, we are actually underlying that the best we could do is to be mindful that we do have biases, identify what they are, and try to manage those and make sure that because of our biases, we are not actually having any impact, negative impact for the parties in mediation. And I just want to bring a different topic in the mix if there is appetite to discuss that, which is understanding that there are perceptions of biases and there are biases of mediators. I love doing co-mediations, and that allows sometimes to manage a lot of blind spots that we have as mediators. And you can actually, as a co-mediator, do a lot of positive, constructive things for the parties and for the co-mediator. to balance the possibility of harming the parties or even impacting the integrity of the process, because we do have implicit biases, we all have. And sometimes if we realize that after the fact, I keep now, a friend of mine gave me suggestion of keeping the learning from each of my mediations. I keep a kind of learning journal, but it's not nice that you actually realize something after the fact when actually mediation has been completed. So live, as you feed into it, co-mediator could actually support you in the process. Sometimes there are racial biases, gender biases, and that could actually be a lot of harm for the parties that Nina's talking about. And Javad, I think the example that you shared earlier, even the perception of the parties and then you being self-reflective, it might have been possible to have another co-mediator. And sometimes if it's the gender issue, you could bring in another gender, another person who is maybe a female mediator, and that might bring people's perception of mediators' power. So, I mean, it's not possible every time, but it's interesting that there are deep-rooted inequalities, and we can't ever be complacent by saying, okay, my path is ultimately to get rid of every of the such possibilities. So we are always going to be work in progress. We can get better of ourselves if we try consciously, and there is a lot of room for learning. And as a mediator, particularly, there is a lot that we can do as a being authentic human being than pretending to be someone else. But I think that some of those kind of things, that we are building relationships in a way between the parties, we're opening up their communication. So we might see different things in the process, that it could be balanced better, build trust if there are two people more than one.
So Jawad, yeah, Jawad, I think the question also is that over time, as if you noticed, is there a certain bias that you were able to tackle and you were able to get over it? Is there some example that you want to look at, and then we can think of similar other examples where I'm saying that maybe we can work to a path where you don't have biases. So is that something that you look at? I mean, we start with a certain example where were able to tackle something internally, not in just a matter of a particular mediation in general.
Well, actually, that will be difficult to say, Vikram, because in almost every case, something or the other comes up, something or the other happens, something perhaps the way a person looks or the way the person speaks, or the kind of ideas that the person holds, which is likely to create that bias in your mind. Now, the only thing is, as both Nina and Archana said, what is important is being conscious of that, being aware that when it happens to you, that this is happening to me, and I have to take a step back, and I have to maintain my omnipartiality with the party, notwithstanding the fact that it has affected me. I think that is what is most important for us. And that is, as both of them said, that it is work in progress. I mean, nobody can say that I have got rid of all my biases. What is most important is, am I able to recognize my bias when it happens to me? And not necessarily after the mediation is over, as Archana said, but as it is happening to me, am I able to understand that? That is one. The other thing, based on, just from what Nina was talking about, we being, humans and being vulnerable to all these things. There was a very interesting discussion sometime back where some students were talking about artificial intelligence. And they said that, IBM has developed the supercomputer called Watson. I'm sure most of you would have heard, all of you would have heard about that. And that computer is able to look at your face and tell you what exactly you're feeling. So the question was, is artificial intelligence going to replace human mediators? So my reply to that was that Watson does not have those same prejudices, those same biases, the same vulnerabilities, the same weaknesses that I have, or Nina has, or Archana has, or you, Vikram, have. Okay, now what makes us able to communicate with people, how people can connect to us, how they can relate to us, is because they know that we are capable of experiencing those same things that they are experiencing. So that is what makes that communication more interesting for them. And that is why they come out with more information. They come out, share their feelings, share their emotions. It's because they know that you will understand, because you would experience, you're capable of experiencing those same emotions, whereas Watson cannot experience that. Watson may carry some biases and prejudices that his designers would have had. Those who, configured the algorithms, those biases may be there. But the vulnerabilities, the emotions, the feeling of, the fact that, can IBM get angry? No. But when I'm angry and I'm talking to Nina or Archana and I'm a party and they are the mediators, I know that they will understand why I'm angry. Because in a similar situation, they would have felt the same emotion, right? So that is what I think makes a human mediator much more valuable than, any artificial intelligence. It's exactly those things that we regard as defects in us, as imperfections in us, or our own weaknesses or vulnerabilities, or whatever you may call it. That is what makes us, good mediators, I suppose, or good peacemakers, or good communicators. You don't have to be necessarily a mediator to be able to communicate. Now, many years back, before my wife married me, she used to work for a suicide help organization, and they were trained only to listen to people. And all they had to do was listen to people who are depressed or who are suicidal. So they would either call up or they would come to the office and sit there and talk to these people, and these people would just listen. Okay, so that trained her to be a very good listener. And when she married me, she found those things very useful for her, because
we noticed that.
okay.
Jawad, we noticed that.
Right? So yeah, so she's a very good listener. So I think what makes us good mediators, if I may use that word good, is that the fact that we are capable of feeling those same emotions that I think the parties can feel, or
No,
the people before us can feel.
no, the question specifically was for this reason, because when we talk about evolution, so were there certain biases that you were in general? I mean, like I said, this is not a particular mediation or anything. You maybe realize some aspect of yourself, and you over time have you been able to take care of that. So that's what I was trying to get at. A specific example, if you have something, so we know that yes, there is an
Yeah,
evolution which is
yeah.
possible. That part. Is there anything that?
Yes. Well, now that you asked me that question, I'm able to recollect one example which happened very recently. And that helped me to understand that, yes, I have come some distance from 7-8 years back. Okay. So this was about a year back. I was mediating a dispute that was again referred by the court. It was a matrimonial issue between a doctor husband and an architect wife. Now, these were very orthodox. It was a very orthodox, a typical Muslim family. And what happened was, the wife's grievance was that though she was professionally qualified, husband was not allowing her to work, and he was so suspicious of her because he used to stay away for a week. He was working in some, with some organization, and that used to keep him away. And he used to come to the house over the weekends, and he had installed cameras in their living room. And the excuse he gave was that I sometimes when I feel like looking at the children, I see this. So, but she felt that it was because of his suspicious nature. Now, in this case, what used to happen was the parents of this husband used to come accompany him, and they would sit flanking him on both sides. Okay, so the father would sit on his right side and the mother would sit on his left side. Throughout the mediation, they won't open their mouths, but it was very obvious that, okay, he wouldn't say or do anything which was not okay with them. So, but the fact is, this was something that in normal circumstances, if I was the same person I was about 7-8 years back, I would have been very, very biased towards the husband. In fact, what happened was sometimes in our mediation center, interns are permitted to come and watch with the parties' consent. So just to understand how a real mediation takes place. So when the parties left, the intern, young girl, told me, "Sir, how could you not react to that woman?" I just wanted to get up and hug her and tell her, "Honey, don't worry, everything's going to be all right." But you were just sitting over there and you were talking so normally with her. And this man was, she used a word which I can't repeat on a public forum. It begins with A and ends with E. He was such a, that kind of a guy. And how could you not feel that, anger towards him? I said, well, it's a lesson learned the hard way. So I could, keep that emotion aside because I recognized it. What happened in this case was I could recognize that, yes, I don't like this guy and I'm feeling biased towards him, but this is something that I should not, I should overcome. And perhaps try to see what is actually driving this and what is making him do the things that he's doing. And that was when I started, and interestingly, this man could communicate very freely with me. And gradually, over a period of time, he stopped bringing his parents along. So he started coming alone. So that was when I felt that, yes, well, to some extent, at least I have achieved some success over my ability to recognize my own biases and deal with them. So that is one example I could immediately think of.
Nina, is there something that you can think of, a bias that you've been able to identify and then being able to get over it by getting into the root of it?
Yes, of course. Of course, in a family mediation, for example, you somewhat relate to your own relationship with your own husband and maybe your own divorce and things like that. And of course, you think we have millions of thoughts going around. So when they say something, you think, yeah, that's the total same, or how could he think that? I mean, it's so fast. So how can we stop it? But the thing is for me, is to keep very focused on them and their needs and to continue to ask like curious questions. And I think I use my intuition a lot as well. A kind of feeling I get from if what they say is genuine or if it's just something that they have, used in their fighting for a long while without thinking about what it really means, things like that. And of course, if I asked once an inappropriate question, so when I heard my question, I heard that it was inappropriate. So I said, I apologize. I would like to withdraw my question and I want to reformulate it. Would that be okay with you? So as long as you're, as long as you're trying to keep yourself on track, of course, sometimes you do mistakes, but you can always apologize. And if you don't realize it at the time, you can always do it later. I think that's important, to apologize if you do something.
No, what I'm trying to get into is actually first being able to understand and identify a bias and then being able to overcome it, and how you did that, getting into the root of it, how did that happen? Maybe Archana has an example there. Archana, do you have something on that aspect?
I frankly don't think it would be that black and white. I wish if it was. I think it's a continuum, I will say. It's understanding, recognizing our own biases, which could very well be something that is powerful and positive. Like, I think just kind of giving example, working on a lot of issues focused on women and their vulnerabilities. When I go into mediation, I know that there is a bias from what I have learned and seen, and how do I work and give chance to the parties who are before us to kind of be themselves and keep my own thinking about some of the issues in check, but I am who I am. So keeping note of things, and there are certain things which, again, we are thinking about bias as necessarily something which could be harmful, but some of the aspects that we come along learning as positive things, which goes to humanity and inequality, and the biases which would demand that some action to be taken, whether you do it or not, is crucial as well. So I'm not answering your question directly, Vikram, because it's
No one is.
difficult. You
No
you
one is.
think that
No,
yeah,
yes,
but it's difficult because it's a process, it's a continuum, and I wish if someone was to analyze that for us. It's something that we have to analyze and move along and see that next time we do it right and train ourselves to do better than the last time.
Because I want to put that hope out for people that yes, you can overcome them once you have been able to identify them, and what is the process for that, how it is to be done. So Jawad definitely has something to say. Jawad, please.
Well, about overcoming them, I really don't know. But I think perhaps a reasonable ambition would be to be able to identify them as and when it happens to you, and be able to deal with it at that point of time. So, see, I think it's the way our brain is structured. It's called neuroplasticity. I think the environment we grow up in, the kind of values that we are taught, what we see our parents do, what we see happening in surroundings, all this, designs our brain, if I may call it that. So, and there are certain parts of the brain that teach you so many things, and the way you respond to situations is sometimes, without even thinking about it, you don't even realize that, okay, why am I doing this? You don't realize it. It's automatically what you think. Like, for example, if you say that, I'm a liberal person and I believe in liberal values, that's a bias, right? Though it's a very positive bias, according to me. So it is nevertheless a bias. So when you see somebody who's very conservative or who is very deeply religious, you feel that person is not really evolved, not an evolved person, because he or she does not share the values that you believe in. So that is where your bias creeps in. And now, how do you deal with that? Now, that is where I think, as mediators, we are told that we are taught to not be judgmental about the other person. That person's right to hold that view, the right of that person to hold those values or to believe in those ideas. So we respect that, and without imposing our ideas on the other person, we try to see whether we can have a conversation where we can perhaps build some understanding or some kind of a rapprochement between those ideas and what the other person might be believing in. So I think that's the only effort that we can make. But if you say that, can I really overcome all my biases, all my those ideas that have, crept into my subconscious from the time I was born, and there are so many experiences that we go through as infants when we are not able to articulate in words what we are exactly feeling. And those experiences, depending on, supposing my caregiver was loving towards me and affectionate and showed a lot of love and affection, I grew up to be a loving person. And if my caregiver was not, had subjected me to some kind of a pain. Now, I don't, at that point of time, I didn't know how to articulate it, but when something happens, I feel very uneasy. I feel a sense of discomfort when I see something happening that, in my subconscious reminds me of that, but I'm not conscious of it. So these are all, unconscious, they are called as unconscious biases. So the very name suggests that we are not conscious of those biases. So the question is, again, coming back to what we need to do to be able to understand that is, practice mindfulness. But it doesn't mean that we are able to deal with each and every emotion that we feel, each and every bias that we experience. We may not be able to recognize many of those biases. They may just not be, we will not be able to scrutinize them in the same way that we should be doing. But as long as, we are able to at least recognize the major issues that we may be encountering when we are doing a mediation, and be able to deal with our emotions that, are triggered on account of those biases, I think we have a good thing going.
Perfect.
At least on my part, I'm not so ambitious as to think that, because for that I'll have to go to the Himalayas and,
we'll send
be
you
there
that,
for a few
Jawad. You will
years.
go there. You will get over it. We'll give you another 10 years. But Mark has come in. Hi, Mark. we were talking about mediator bias. So the question is there a bias that you identified, and were you able to get over it? Were you be able to overcome a certain bias? Is there an example that you have?
Well, there's so many biases that people have been talking about lately. Confirmation bias, affirmation bias, cognitive bias. They get very, very deeply into some of what makes us tick, Then there's sort of the obvious sort of stereotypes and things like that. But I sometimes see in the clients a bias. So if somebody wants to make a point, and they say, well, this is how I see it, and then they go find all the evidence to support or confirm what their position is, that to me is a confirmation bias. It's very similar often to what judges do, frankly. The judge is going to make a decision and then ultimately support the decision with some other analysis, So, but I think from the mediator standpoint, biases are, when we talked a little bit yesterday also, what is it that triggers you? And then the question is, why are you feeling triggered by a particular thing? Is there some bias there that's being triggered? I think that's one question we can ask.
Yeah, okay. So because I was actually trying to get to an example, but nothing came out. I've been trying and I've been trying and I've been trying. Nothing specific has come out. But I don't want to leave it at it's not possible to overcome biases. That's the only thing I don't want to leave it at. But at this point in time, of course, we'll have to finish this session, because Mark's session on community mediation, a US experience, that is going to start. So thank you very much. I'm not asking for any concluding thing, only because in a way we have kind of concluded. If there's anything specific that you want to conclude on, I'm perfectly all right. Is there anything that anyone wants to say? Archana, is there anything? Nina wants to say something.
I think we should never think that we are on top on everything, and we should never underestimate any situation or party or issue. And no mediation is like the other. So we need to be humble, having a humble approach towards ourselves and others, and also trust the process and believe that the parties have the possibility to find a good solution, because they have. So I think humbleness.
Yep, definitely. Yes, Archana, anything that you want to conclude on, if there is something?
I would just say that to summarize in a way, that mediation is a process of trust building at the end of the day, and you build trust amongst the parties as much as you can, and of course you present yourself the best possible of you, being conscious, mindful of our biases, which could again be positive or negative impact on mediation and the issues that the parties have. But I don't think we can ever be someone who would overcome things, but we can be conscious about it, and we can build our skills to see the red flags, to acknowledge that they are there, and try to work at it and build skills. So I think that, Vikram, I don't know if you were disappointed a bit, and I know you know the answer, but there is no one, probably, if someone was to claim that, yes, I have identified this bias and overcome this, probably it may not be a truthful story, because it is something that's deep rooted, but we can be conscious and mindful and work at it and continue doing it. So
I think one aspect we didn't touch was the aspect of transparency in relation to the bias that you've been able to, either you already know or you've identified. That part we didn't really touch too much on. So maybe if we continue the discussion. So Jawad, is there anything that you want to kind of conclude on?
Well, I think everyone has more or less summarized very neatly what exactly is the mediator bias and how to deal with it. Just to add to what I think Mark made a point. Hi, Mark. I'm Jawad from India. It's a pleasure meeting you. Vikram didn't introduce us.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the reason was I wanted to cut this session a little earlier, because I want to go and eat something. I'm actually feeling hungry. So I thought I'll cut this session a little earlier, rush, eat, and come back. That was the whole idea. Otherwise, of course, introductions will happen in the next session when we start the next session. So that was the idea.
So I won't hold you back from your dinner, Vikram. All I wanted to say was, See, one of the ways I think in which you can identify what's happening is perhaps, following your emotions. When you feel triggered, when you feel a particular emotion, when you feel, either some kind of an unease, or you feel some kind of an irritation, or, perhaps even anger, or you feel depressed. I think that is the starting point where you have to start thinking, why is this happening to me? So I think that we can aspire to reach that level of consciousness where we are able to understand that, okay, this is happening to me. Let me see what is triggering this. So I think that would be a starting point of, trying to deal with our biases. That's all. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Of course, a discussion which we need much more time on, which we will do a session after the conference maybe. So thank you very much. Pleasure
Thank you.
speaking to all of you. And we'll, of course, you